Hi guys, today I want to talk to you about what it actually means to be a high value man in a relationship. And I want to bring up this topic because there's been this glorification recently of toxic masculinity. And if you look at the red pill movement, for example, and if you look at even the principles from a lot of other relationship or dating coaches here and there, it glorifies this toxic masculine traits that is not really high value, but disguises himself as high value. And lots of men, I'm noticing, have become very confused and they're destroying their relationship very unconsciously. And I know I might get some hate from these toxic masculine people in this video. That's fine. But all I'm asking for you to do is just watch to the end of this video with an open mind. You know, in my program, we enroll a lot of business leaders and what we call wealthier men who possess a lot of these traits that we would consider high value. But this new model, this new way of seeing what being high value means has been very revolutionary for these people, and I'm sure it'll be very mind-blowing for you as well. And if this is the first time you're watching one of my videos, my name is Geoffrey and I help men in long-term relationships or in marriages with the right skills and knowledge to design a thriving relationship. And I want you to be able to design this on your own. So if you want more content on this topic, be sure to subscribe to this channel. Also click that bell button as well to be notified when I post new videos every single week. And just so you know, also the masterclass on the 5 proven steps to rebuilding your relationship from the ground up is still open. So if you want to join the masterclass or if you want to submit your application for my Relationship Revival program, then be sure to stick around to the very end of this video for an announcement on how you can join both those things. So there are 2 models that we can use to really understand what being high value really means. The first one is simply what I call the hierarchy of needs model. And so here you can look at any hierarchy of needs kind of models. This one we're going to use the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so basically, if you look at the Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, you can see 5 different levels of needs. On the bottom here, you have physiological needs. And then on top of that, you have safety needs. These 2 needs are what we call the material needs. These are very low level needs that we have, starting from the very basic things like shelter, food, water, etc. Then on top of that, we have safety needs. This is different from the safety that we talk about, which is emotional and psychological safety. These are really the lower level safety needs, like having a great job, having a great career, financial security, financial safety, etc. But then as you go up above, you have more the what we call spiritual needs. And again, these are like love and belonging, esteem needs, and also self-actualization. Now, if you look at this chart of the hierarchy of needs, and you compare it to my pillars, which are emotional, psychological safety, and then mutual admiration, goal alignment, and so on, you might realize that we don't even address the first 2 needs because those should be things that are necessary, but they're not sufficient anymore to create a good relationship. But if we go into, let's say, understanding emotional and psychological safety, that's really addressing this love and belonging portion, the 3rd pillar in Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you look at the 4th pillar of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is esteem needs, that's talking about mutual admiration. And the self-actualization part is when we talk about things like sexual passion, deeper emotional fulfillment, and goal alignment. So the 4th and 5th pillars here of my relationship mountain model. Now, when you look at toxic masculinity, or you look at this fake high value man movement, they're really focused on just the first 2, the lower level material needs here in Maslow's hierarchy of needs model. And you can see this very clearly when you look at these high value men or toxic masculine people who brag about their material needs, the cars they have, how much power they have, how much money they have, and they use that as a basis for how powerful they are. But they never ever talk about this upper level needs where like love and belonging, esteem needs, etc. They don't talk about how they bring other people up. And as you'll see later, this is a big problem now because the world has evolved, guys. You know, if you look at the world that say back then when women couldn't vote, women couldn't get their own work, women couldn't get their own education. If you're a man and you can provide women these lower level needs and prove to her that you have a lot of material wealth and so on, that was great because those were things that women couldn't get themselves to the extent that men could. But we live in a world now when women have a lot more freedom. They have a lot more independence. They have a lot more capabilities. They have a lot more power as well. And so if you're still relying on these lower level needs in your relationship and thinking that that's high value, that's a problem because that's not high value anymore. Women don't need that anymore. That's still necessary, yes, but no longer sufficient to create a really deep connection in a relationship. And as we'll talk about later too, the real high value women in this world don't really want men who can only provide these lower level values anymore. So the first question you need to ask yourself is, does being rich, having a lot of material wealth, if you look at it in this model, is it really high value? And a lot of my clients who are very high profile people, who are wealthy, they still have major relationship issues. And so you have to ask yourself, is it enough? Is it enough to just have material wealth? So that's the first model we can see it in. The second model is what we call the dependence maturity model. And to understand this, we need to understand that there's actually 3 different stages of development when it comes to dependence stages. So the first stage that a lot of men find themselves in, and this is when we're very young, when we're probably teenagers, is the state of dependence. This is imagine a cup, and this is when your cup isn't really full. And so you're looking for a relationship, you're looking for someone else to fill your cup for you. This is when you get a lot of needy behavior, when you show up as a beta version of yourself. And if you look at this in terms of like the power game between you and your partner, this is when you're losing the power game. So this is the first stage, the dependent stage. But what happens to a lot of people is that they move to the complete opposite direction, which is what we call the selfish independent stage. This is when you start to get a lot of wealth, for example, you start to get a lot of your own security, your own self-esteem, etc., and you start to become more confident in yourself. But if you could visualize that this is still you having one cup that is full, but it's full enough to just fill your own cup. And this is almost like an overcompensation in a way, where you're using this newfound power in a very selfish way, in a very self-serving way. And so here again, if you visualize the power game again, before you were down here, now you're up here. And now you want to assert yourself and you want to assert your dominance, which is why if you look at a lot of toxic masculine activities and traits and paradigms, it's all about asserting dominance. But what happens eventually is that people graduate from this overcompensation state more towards the middle. This is when we reach a point where we're noble independent. So here again, if you use the cup analogy, this is when, yes, you have enough internal strength to fill your own cup, but your cup is overflowing now. And so because it overflows, you want to fill another cup. And so here you're using your independence, your strength, for the benefit of other people. And if you look at this in terms of the power game again, this is when you no longer even worry about the power game. This is when you transcend the power game. And this is really the state of being what it means to be true alpha, true masculine state. And the funny thing is that if you look at any discourse of life, whether that's career, whether that's spiritual, whether that's you being a parent, even in your relationships, every single one goes through these 3 stages. They go from the needy state to this overcompensation where they're selfishly independent, and then they go eventually to the middle, the noble independence. For example, for my career, when I first started my career, I was in a very needy state. I didn't see myself as the alpha. I saw myself as the beta person, and I was displaying a lot of needy behaviors in the beginning. But then I made my first $1 million. And when I made my first million at that time, I remembered I was still extremely selfish about it. Not only was the way that I got my first million in a very selfish way, because sure, I said externally that I wanted to give value to people, but really it was that I wanted money. And I used my ability to make a lot of money to assert my dominance over people. I bought a lot of material goods that were very selfish of me to buy. I bought a lot of cars, I bought luxury watches, etc., and I used it all very selfishly. But then eventually you graduate towards this portion when you're nobly independent, where now I'm using my inner power, my inner strength, not only to help myself, but also to help other people as well, to create as much value as possible. And you can see this in relationships too. When I first was in a relationship, I was in a very needy state, but then I discovered this inner power that I have, inner strength that I have, and I used it in a very selfish way. I was always coming to the relationship as, what can you give me? What can you get to me? Instead of, how can I create value for other people? But again, that 3-stage development always happens. And if you look at, again, your spiritual life, even what it means to become parents, it's the same thing. When you're single and you're a teenager, you're in this needy state, then you move to your early 20s, which is when usually you're becoming very, very selfish. But then when you become a parent, you realize that, I cannot be this selfish anymore, and I need to go to the state where I'm nobly independent. So this maturity model happens in every part of life. This is just the human evolution. And this is not something I'm making up. This is just the human evolution, and you can see it every single place you go to. So the funny part is, if you look at the toxic masculine model, you're really still in stage 2. But the funny part is that people in stage 2 always think that the stage they're in, when they're in stage 2, that's the highest stage possible, because it makes them feel happy. It makes them feel good, because you are getting gains from yourself at the expense of other people here. But understand that this is not the highest stage of what it means to be high value. And a classic example of this is the guy who wrote The Game, Neil Strauss. You saw that he wrote the game, and he was at stage 2 at that point, and he was really confident about the things he was saying. He was saying that, being able to get any woman you want, having a good game, is really what defines him as a man. But eventually he evolved to the point where he realized that stuff, I don't want that anymore. I want something higher value. I want something more than that. And so that's when he graduated from this level 2 to level 3, where he wants noble independence. And in case you want to check out more on this, I made a video on what it means to embody positive masculinity. So I'm going to link the video up above here or down below this video as well if you want to learn more about that. Now, when you understand those two models, you'll start to understand also that there's a movement right now where people are trying to glorify toxic masculinity, being in this lower level value, being in this stage 2, saying that stage 2 is really the highest level of high value you can get. For example, we'll take a look at this glorification of objectifying women. Basically, when we see our partners as women as not having their own feelings, having their own decisions, desires, dreams, etc. We see this in Andrew Tate's Red Pill movement, for example. We see this when we try to buy our partner's love by buying them vacations, buying them things, buying them flowers, thinking that we can buy their love because their emotions are so uncomplex in our mind. We see this in the glorification of how men love to see sex as a conquest, as them hunting for sex, hunting for women to have sex with them or something like that. And we see this in the many transactional attitudes that we have in relationship too, where we don't see our partner as a complete human being. We see them as just material things that we can buy, we can influence, we can manipulate, etc. We also see this when men try to be overly controlling too, when we don't really take into consideration what other people want, but only what we want. We use all these tactics. We use money, we use power, we use our charisma maybe to try to influence people on what we want. And what's worse is that often when we don't get what we want, we show a lot of aggression as well. We also see this with men who are overly obsessed with power as well. I mean, you see this with a lot of relationships now when they play the tit for tat game. It's like, oh, you don't do this for me, so why would I do that for you? And if you look at a lot of the rhetoric, a lot of the conversations of this toxic masculine people, the Red Pill movement, for example, it's always about whether something is making them more powerful or less powerful, beta, alpha. This power struggle is such a real thing in their head. It's such an obsessive topic of conversation with them. And if they see someone or something that undermines their power, they start to get very, very aggressive immediately. And you can see this with the way they talk sometimes. They start to scream and shout and try to over-assert themselves, over-assert their dominance. And you see this also, what I call the communist complex, where they're trying to weaken their partner by taking away their freedom, taking away their ability to express, for example, their ability to desire things, to have their own work, have their own career, even have the freedom to actually make more money than the man sometimes. And if you think about it, this is very much like communist countries like North Korea or China right now, where they would purposely suppress the people living in that country so that they don't know what's out there. They don't know what's better that they can get. They're only stuck here. Or let's say your partner finally has this courage to be able to explore things outside the relationship, their career. Or maybe they want some space from the relationship because they want to explore some things outside the relationship. A lot of men feel very threatened by that instantly. But understand that if you do any of these things, if you objectify women, if you feel the need to over-assert your control, your power like this, and if you get overly aggressive when you feel that power to be threatened, if you display a lot of these toxic masculine traits, understand that that means that you're nowhere close to being high value at all. It actually means, if you go back to model 1 again, that you as a person are only able to provide these lower level values, and you cannot provide these self-actualized values, these higher level spiritual values. And so because you're low level like this, you have to play some games, some manipulation, some tactics to either suppress the other person or to assert your power so that the person will stay with you. You know, I always say, for example, only low level people, only low level men are not able or struggle to give their partner true space. Because they know that if their partner explores other relationships, other people, being single, and other things, they're going to find that there's going to be a lot of other people, other men that are higher value than them, and they're scared. But true high value people, if you're actually high value, you won't be scared of giving your partner space. You wouldn't be afraid of empowering your partner. You know that they can find something else. They can explore other things. But at the end of the day, you are the highest value, and that's true high value state. But again, if you have to resort to all these manipulative tactics, you have to question, are you really that high value? And again, if you look at model number 2, know that if you are using all these power games to try to get your partner to come closer to you, know that you're still at level 2. You might feel very powerful right now that you're able to control and manipulate someone into coming to you, but all the level 3 people are looking at that and kind of laughing at that, because that's not what the highest level actually is. There's a higher level than that. You're simply boys with high egos. You're not really kings. You're boys with high egos. And a third reason why you should stop glorifying this types of behavior is that, do you really think true high value women want someone who can only provide the low level values? Do you think they want someone who is in this stage 2 where they're using their power in a very selfish way? Do you think they want that? I mean, think about all the high value women, celebrities for example, high profile figures that you know of. Maybe that's YouTubers, maybe that's celebrities, I don't know. They have all the money they need. They have all the power they need. They have all the influence they need. They have all the lower level things they need. Do you think they need another man to actually give them that? Or are they looking for a man that actually can give them the higher level value, like the love and belonging, like the esteem needs, like the self-actualized needs? So if you're in stage 2 right now, if you can only provide the low level values and you take pride in that and you glorify that, thinking that you can get all these women who are high value, think about it. The true high value women, do they really, really need that? Do they really, really want that? So now I want to give you 5 questions you need to ask yourself to start to get yourself out of this toxic masculine state. And truth is that if you really want to become this high value person, you do need to do the work to, let's say, untether, to become emotionally bulletproof, to be able to create safety and deep levels of safety, to be able to create admiration, etc. So if you want to learn how to do that, I have a masterclass for you where you can join. It's about an hour and a half where we go deeply into these topics right here. But for now, I just want to give you 5 questions you need to ask yourself to start to get yourself out of this mindset of glorifying toxic masculinity. So the first thing here, guys, is we got to go back to the 3-stage maturity model again. So we said here, if you go back to the cup example, stage 2 is when you have enough value to fulfill your own cup, to fill your own cup. So if we use the water in that cup as a symbol for value, for example, how can the value that is created in stage 2 be higher than the value in stage 3, where your cup is not only full itself, but it's so overflowing that you want to fill another cup? Of course, the person in stage 3 is going to be higher value. So if you're in stage 2 though, if you're embodying and liking a lot of these toxic masculine activities and paradigms and ideologies and so on, you'll always feel like that's the highest level of value that you can go because your cup is as full as it's been. But know that beyond stage 2, there's another stage that's much higher level value. But of course, a lot of people don't see this because again, when you're in stage 2, your cup is so full, the fullest it's ever been. And when you get to stage 3, your cup is not going to get more full. In fact, you're giving away some of the value that you have for yourself. And a lot of people see this giving of value as giving away some of their value, but it's not. No, you have enough value that your cup is already full. Your cup is just overflowing now to where you want to help someone else, and that desire comes naturally. And that desire is just a natural progression when you mature. Just like how Neil Strauss did, just like I did, just like a lot of my clients did, as you mature, as you become a higher value man, you naturally go from 2 to 3. So stop glorifying stage 2 as the highest level of value that a man can get. It's not even close to it. Number 2, think about what high value women really want. Think about the real high value people that you see, the public figures that you see that are high value. They're both beautiful in every single way, inside and out, and they have all the material possessions that they need. Do they really want someone who's at stage 2? Do they really want someone who can only provide the low level values, who can only boast their material wealth? You know, for my partner, for example, my partner's pretty wealthy. When I made my $3rd million in this business, she didn't care. Nobody cared because that's not what she wanted, not that she needed anymore. She's focused on something much higher level value. Number 3 is I want to introduce this thought to you that you don't know what you're missing here. You know, when you can create a deep sense of love and belonging in the relationship, when you can create this mutual admiration, this deep mutual admiration, this deep goal alignment, this deep sexual passion, etc., that's when your relationship moves beyond just transactional, beyond just material stuff. And honestly, the bliss we get, the fulfillment we get, the bond we get from that love and belonging, from having that safety, from that mutual admiration, from that deep goal alignment, where we can dream together as a couple, we can talk about our goals, we can talk about our deepest feelings, etc. That feeling is a lot more fulfilling than any material things you can have, than any sex you can have. And it's why, if you look at a lot of pickup artists, they eventually graduate from being pickup artists to wanting deeper connections with their women, deeper connections with people. Example, Neil Strauss. And a lot of my clients go through this too. A lot of my clients, they go through this stage when they gain all the material wealth that they want. They gain all the material influence that they want. And for a while, they have fun playing this game of seducing women, etc. But eventually, they graduate from that and go, you know what? I want to create something deeper. Because that higher level values, that's so much more fulfilling as a human being. Number 4, I want you to think about if you were wanting someone to commit to you, to have a long-term relationship with someone, to marry someone. Think about what you're asking there. You're asking someone to spend their one and only life, the only life they're going to have, forever with you. If that's the ask you're going to ask someone else to do, you better deliver. You better be able to create higher level values, because if you can't, then imagine if you're your partner. Imagine having to be forced to spend the rest of your life with someone who cannot give you the higher level value needs that all humans fundamentally want. Think about how painful that is for your partner. So once you think about it that way, it's kind of absurd to be happy in this low level state, in this fake high value man state. And number 5, just think about what giving high level value means to you. If giving high level value means that you are giving a lot of material wealth, a lot of money, a lot of goods, a lot of things, a lot of power, a lot of influence, and you are asserting that, that's your currency of what it means to be high value, then think about, is it really high value when the high value women, the high value people that you're trying to be with, that you're trying to have a relationship with, isn't going to value that when they can get it themselves? Is it really high value? Think about that. So stop glorifying this toxic masculine culture. Stop glorifying this fake sense of what it means to be high value. Being high value is when you can create the high level spiritual values, when you can create this deep sense of love and belonging in your relationship through emotional and psychological safety. Is when you can create a lot of esteem needs by creating this deep mutual admiration you have for each other. It's when you can reach this self-actualized state by having deep goal alignment and deepening your relationship to be able to talk about the deep human conditions, deep human emotions, deep human experiences, etc. Not just seeing women as objects, not just seeing things as just a power struggle. You're transcending that completely. Now, if you want to learn more on this, I have a bunch of interviews with all of my clients who high value in the material sense, but they realize that being high value in the material sense isn't enough. They need to be high value in the spiritual sense as well. So I'm going to leave you with some videos here on the right of your screen. So feel free to watch that if you want to learn more about this. But for now, guys, I'll see you in the next video.